Talking Oregon football. We got James Foss on the line here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, share the videos out there on social media, and subscribe. And you need to subscribe, therefore you know when we're going live, which is just about every day. Troy Dye, from the standpoint of being a guy that makes the plays, has been the face of the defense for a couple of years. In regards to the future, Kayvon Thibodeau came in as a freshman, did not disappoint with 14 tackles for loss and 9 sacks. So Thibodeau obviously coming back. Dye's the big loss. How's the defense look?
The defense is looking really good. Andy Avalos, clearly in his last year, proved he could coach up really any group, whether they were his recruits or not, and definitely returning, I believe, something close to 8 or 9 starters, full-time starters, while there's a lot of rotation, 8 or 9 full-time starters back onto a defense that really held their own, especially at the beginning of the year, had insane touchdown defending numbers, and then proved in a lot of different ways that they could stand up to teams with big offenses in big moments, in the Washington game, in the Utah game. And so you got Kayvon Thibodeau on that edge. He's going to be one of the most exciting edge rushers for the next 2 years in college football. Definitely someone that NFL guys are already talking about. Austin Filou right next to him on the defensive at the defensive tackle. He's actually he's a senior. He's the leading tackler on the defensive line, returning this year. And Jordan Scott, the nose guard, he kind of entertained some NFL opportunity or some draft declaration opportunity, but I think he made the wise decision in coming back. He's been known as a run stopper. It'll be interesting to see if he can add some speed. He's just a really like a fire tank of a human in the best possible way. And so he's been known as that guy who's just going to plug up the middle. It'll be interesting to see if he can add some speed and maybe find some pass rush that really complements what Kayvon is doing on the edge. And so definitely a lot of experience and a lot of just pure talent that's coming back on the defensive line. In terms of linebacker, you mentioned that Troy Dye will be gone. Lamar Winston Jr., another senior who is also part of that class, another local guy, he also leaves. He's not known for the productivity that Troy Dye was known for, but definitely known for the leadership and just the smarts, the physical smarts of being in the right place at the right time. He's someone that Andy Avalos could really count on to be in position all the time. Isaac Slade Matuatia, who I think is one of the best open field tacklers in the country. He's very fast, maybe could serve to become a little more well-conditioned. You could kind of see him fall out at the end of games last year, but definitely has that pure talent and played a ton of football last year and the year before. So he'll be returning at the linebacker position. And the new guys coming in, Noah Sewell, we've talked a lot about at linebacker, as well as Justin Flo, both huge recruits coming in to the Oregon program. They'll be young guys. I don't know exactly how Andy Avalos is going to be able to evaluate their readiness for playing in the games, especially with 2 huge games just to start off. You may see another guy like Mace Funa come in at that linebacker position just to sort of be in there and help young guys like Flo and like Sewell kind of adjust. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Noah Sewell starting on day one. He's physically, he has all the makings of a guy who should be starting college football.
We pretty much know what the bar is. That's one of my typical questions when I bring people on here for a team preview for the season. Okay, what's success? But considering what Mario Cristobal has established here very quickly at Oregon, and a Pac-12 championship followed by a Rose Bowl win and a top 5 finish in the country, I would think another Pac-12 championship and a trip to a Rose Bowl or a college football playoff would spell success this year.
I certainly think so. And I think the conference championship is really huge. And I can't imagine a conference championship. Pac-12 is probably the one conference where you imagine the conference championship and then maybe not making it to the Rose Bowl, depending. I know the Rose Bowl is a college football playoff game this year. So that'll be a little different in terms of just what that might mean if Oregon ends up having one loss or two losses and still winning the Pac-12, definitely a possibility. But I think a lot of people are rightfully, in a lot of ways, excited for and expecting a college football playoff bid, at least within the next 2 to 3 years from Mario Cristobal. I think he's given everybody every reason to expect that, especially with early success. I think the makings of last year's team and the heartbreak of that Arizona State loss had a lot of people thinking that Oregon was immediately going to be ready right then and there. And if we hadn't lost Arizona State, or if we hadn't played Auburn, what would have happened? We would have been in the playoff. If we were in the playoff, we're number 4, we get shellacked by LSU. And that's all well and good, and that's okay to have that playoff bid. But I really feel good about the fact that I started 2020, despite how the rest of the years went. I started day 1, 2020 at the Rose Bowl and winning that game. That felt a lot better than probably getting beaten down by Joe Burrow would have felt. I can't speak for Oklahoma fans, but I really feel that way. And so I think it's very realistic to expect that Mario Cristobal, once he's really developed and ingrained this culture, the culture has definitely been accepted, but it needs to seep throughout the rest of the program and through the fandom and through everybody. And definitely with facing adversity like this, Mario Cristobal is a guy that you want to kind of rally behind and believe in and put all your faith in. And he's definitely someone you can trust. And I think that within the next 2 years, I believe that you'll see Oregon in the college football playoff. Pac-12 titles is absolutely like that is the thing that puts a smile on the face of Oregon fans. It keeps Oregon fans happy, at least for now. Don't listen to some of the angrier ones on Twitter. That like a Pac-12 title is absolutely something that I think is acceptable to expect at a bare minimum.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Ducks for 2020, getting you set for a possible run to another Pac-12 championship. We got James Voss on the line, who joins us on a regular basis to talk Oregon. We had been talking to James, covered the complete roster for the most part, both offense and defense, a few weeks ago, ran out of time. Got to get to the secondary, James. It's a good group.
Absolutely. And yeah, we did run out of time, and definitely criminal on my part to, of all of the groups to miss the secondary. And this is just an incredibly veteran, incredibly exciting, incredibly hyped, probably both fairly and unfairly hyped coming into the end of the year, especially after what they were able to do as part of a greater Andy Avalos defense last year. Andy Avalos really runs a nickel package. He loves putting 5 guys out there. He loves being able to lock down in the passing game, showed that in a lot of different ways last year. And there are 2 senior corners, Diamador Lenore and Thomas Graham Jr., who have been around the program for 4 years, and they're coming back. And they all decided, alongside other Jordan Scott and Austin Filou, they decided, as a defense, we're coming back. We're going to show just how much better this defense can look, even after a really great showing last year. And Diamador Lenore, who's one of my personal favorites, he's a fan favorite. He's a big PFF is a really big fan of Diamador Lenore, and I think that's mostly because he doesn't get thrown at a lot. They love those guys. They love the guys where they can kind of dig into the stats you don't see, the stats you don't automatically see. And I think he's avoided a lot, and so he doesn't get to show out a lot, so he doesn't get talked about a lot by other people who don't obsess over the minor little details like PFF does. But I think he himself, as he's grown into this year, and with just the elevation of the rest of the secondary, with how much better Thomas Graham Jr. is bound to get, because Thomas Graham, he is a great cover corner, but he gets thrown out a lot more. And so because he gets thrown out a lot more, he may or may not get exposed a little more than some of the other corners on this team. So maybe he's unfairly picked on from the fans too, but also from other opposing quarterbacks, opposing offensive coordinators who may see some flaws in his game or some openings in his game. So he'll get tested, especially early on this year, because people will look at the tape and they'll say, oh, Thomas Graham's the one we want to throw at, not Diamador. And also important to note, this may or may not play a big role into this year, but Diamador Lenore has announced he is no longer going by Diamador. He is going by Didi Lenore, which already sounds like a NFL corner. a pretty cool name, pretty fun guy. He's definitely a fan favorite, someone that we're a big fan of. And when you look at the safeties, Brady Breeze is a guy who popped in right at the end of the year last year, really getting more time. He's been around the program, but he got a ton more time at the end of the year. Really big. He's like Kirk Herbstreit's favorite football player, playing in the Pac-12 title game and in the Rose Bowl. Really showed up, really like played his heart out. He's a guy like John Boyette. He reminds me of John Boyette, and just a real gritty guy, real hard worker, team guy, hits really hard, loves hitting hard. And that's a lot of fun. But he really stepped into the starting role and got a lot more time at safety when Nick Pickett, our other safety, was getting a lot of time at that spot. And they Brady sort of rose just a little bit above Nick, especially at the end of the year, and just the way it was working out, the way that the cards fell. And Nick Pickett is a great player. I expect to see him a ton too. You'll totally see rotation. Andy Avalos loves, as I said, playing a lot of corners, a lot of secondary players. So you'll see Nick Pickett in there a ton. But Brady Breeze will probably be day one starter, last day starter. And then other guys to talk about, you can't really talk about the secondary without talking about Javon Holland, a guy that a lot of people are talking about, a lot of NFL scouts are talking about, a lot of Reggie Bush put him in the top 5 defensive players in college football. I just saw that graphic put out there. Take Reggie Bush's opinion for however you want, but he's definitely not being ignored coming into this year as he might have been last year. He had a really great year last year, and he's a leader on this team, absolute leader, vocal, both on social media and directly within the locker room, and he's listened to by the coaches, by the university, by the entire community, and he's a highly respected guy, a high motor guy as well. And I expect him to not only succeed this year, but really start to drum up some excitement for the next level.
Holland tied for the team lead in interceptions with 4, brought one back to the house, and also had 66 tackles, second on the team. Detroit dive 4.5 tackles for loss, filled up the box score each and every game right there. James Foss on the line talking Oregon football with us. So we've covered the offense and the defense, but this is a program that's been back on the rise after that dip, after the championship game appearance in 2014, back at it under Mario Cristobal, and what most people would consider to be a pretty clear number 1 in the Pac-12 right now. Rose Bowl champion, conference champion. So looking at 2020, where do you think that line of demarcation is in regards to, okay, this is what I expect, this would certainly be better, this would be falling beneath the standard of the expectations?
I think, and definitely some Oregon fans or even some people around the country might be surprised to hear someone like me. I may just be more positive. I may be more easily pleased. I think winning the Pac-12 North is a baseline. Winning our division, beating our rivals, claiming victory over Washington and Oregon State, and to a lesser extent, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal, absolutely is like bottom line. That should be what we should expect. Of course, now we're in the Pac-12 title game if we do that. So unless USC is legitimately better this year, even though they're like the Dallas Cowboys of college football, every year they're in the top 10 just by default. Clay Helton hasn't really showed how much he can do with that yet. But if USC is the opponent that ends up in the Pac-12 title game, I think then that's definitely one of the best Pac-12 title games you will have seen in the last couple years for sure. One of the best matchups, legitimate matchups that you could have. And then I would expect if Oregon's there, they would expect to compete. And I think a Pac-12 title is definitely within the realm of possibility again. Whether or not playoffs is the next thing to talk about is a whole nother deal. Then you'd have to talk about how the Ohio State game goes, or if Oregon drops that one game they're not supposed to drop. Because that feels inevitable, and it's all in the timing of when that happens. If it happens early, if it happens late, if there's college football at all, Mark, I'm getting closer and closer to being afraid of it. If there's college football at all, that is my line of demarcation in terms of happiness. We see Oregon football in the fall. That will make me bottom line happy. But if and when they do kick off, I expect the Pac-12 North eventual Pac-12 title to be what makes Oregon fans believe that they lived up to the hype.
For people that watch me on a regular basis, they know that I believe that the national championship is obviously the prize for anyone who's in contention. That is what everyone's gunning for, but it's a bit overrated because you have to rely on other people. So I'm big into what can that particular player or team control. What Oregon can control is winning the Pac-12 championship. They can't decide if they're going to be in the playoff.
Absolutely.
James Voss joining us on a regular basis to talk the Ducks. And hopefully we will have football. We had several weeks of positive news, and more recently with players on campus, some mixed reviews in regards to health, unfortunately. So hopefully we'll have Oregon football along with everyone else. James, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.